Cool. So we are perfectly on time. I guess we can start the webinar now. Good morning, everyone, again. So this webinar today is going to focus on how to finance your MBA. This is a webinar that we have two speakers. One is me, that is I'm Shrikala. I'll just give you a quick introduction in a while. With Rohan, who's from MPOWER Financing, who's going to focus on how you actually plan out your entire finances for an MBA, right? So quickly, let's get started on the agenda. So we are going to have a quick introduction. We'll focus on, when we are applying to US schools, how do you go about it? How do you finance and fund your foreign education, which is your US education? Focus on how MPOWER Financing can help you in terms of its benefits and features. And then we'll have a Q&A session in the end. Quick ground rules for the session. Just make sure you can put on your questions on the chat window throughout the sessions. We will pick up the questions and we'll answer in the end. If there is a lag or any audio issue from your end, and others can hear, make sure you figure out your system, right? Cool. So a quick background about myself. I'm Shrikala. I'm one of the co-founders and the COO at Crackverbal. I have worked in the IT industry for over a decade. I've helped thousands of students for their master's and MBA journey. I head the admissions team here at Crackverbal. I'm also a Goldman Sachs fellow for women entrepreneurs. I mentor a lot of women entrepreneurs for different kind of businesses. I'm also the fellow of the Cherry Blair Foundation for Women Entrepreneurs, again mentoring women entrepreneurs across the world, right? So quick introduction here. The co-speaker here, Rohan Tibrawala. Hi, Rohan. I guess you're already here.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So welcome, Rohan. So Rohan is an MBA from Wharton. He is currently the country director at MPOWER Financing. He was also a CFO at Bain prior to MPOWER. It's an online retail brand. He's been an investment banker with JP Morgan in New York, and he's also keenly engaged with Wharton's admissions and alumni associations and interview committee. Right? Cool. So let's get on to, a few things. So just before that, I just want to take a quick poll. How many of you have taken the GMAT here? If you could just type down how many of you have taken the GMAT, because this is an important aspect of going through the entire financing understanding also. Cool. So we have a lot of people who've not taken GMAT, still planning. Good. A lot of them have booked the date. Some of them have also taken it. Good. Great. Thank you so much. Just to begin with your entire journey, let me just focus on a few free resources to get you started. Before that, just an introduction about Crackable. So we have mentored over 5,000 students. We have completely been focusing on making sure that we help students who get into top schools and aim high. There are some great free resources on our YouTube page, great MBA essay analysis of top schools. I think you must go there if you're looking at planning your MBA applications. Some great ebooks that you can look at, how to select the right school, how to get into your dream B school, things like that. So that will be something that will be really helpful throughout your journey. Make sure you go through these free resources as well. We have a great team of mentors across top schools from Kellogg, Judge, SAID, ISB, Wharton. These are all people who help us throughout, our mentors for the application services who help students throughout the process. There's a MBA profile evaluation option available on our website. I'll just put down this link on the chat window too. For all of you who want to understand how to go about it, you can, have a quick view over here. You can actually put down, get your profile evaluated so that you understand how to go about it. Cool. So let's start planning about the financing aspect of it. So here is when, here is the flow of how you actually would want to start thinking about when this whole financing thing comes into picture, right? So obviously first you take your GMAT. Once you're done with your GMAT, you apply to top school. So typically we are at June right now. Ideally, if you're applying to round one, you should be done with your GMAT by August at least. Because September is when most of the deadlines of top schools have been released already. Some of the schools also have their essays out for round one. If you're looking at round two, maybe you can push a month or two later also. Once you apply, you get an admit. So you go through the interview process, and once you get an admit is when you start planning your finances. However, it's very important for you to start thinking about it right now, right? So here are a few options that you can think of when you are actually planning your finances. Just a minute, Right. So I'm just going to focus on a few options that is very important when you actually start financing your thinking of financing your MBA. These are things that you need to. These are options that are available. These are things that you need to understand. That when you plan your finances for a top MBA program, how do you go about it, right? So some options that are available. You get some non-collateral loans from B schools. Again, when I say non-collateral loans, these are loans which do not require any kind of assets that you need to show. You getting an admit into these top schools itself is something where the B schools will give you a loan. Typically, the interest rates are around 7 to 8% for these kind of loans. Or you take loans from financing companies like MPOWER Financing, where they help you, throughout their process. Collateral loans from Indian banks, say for example you have a house or a land, where you can mortgage these house or land to take some loans from Indian banks. Apart from that, obviously self-financing options. If you have your own savings, or if you have a house that you can take some money off it. Or maybe I call it the FNFF option, which is friends, family, father-in-law, anyone, right? So self-financing options around that. And obviously scholarships, where the schools provide you some kind of scholarships for your MBA program. So these are a lot of fellowships that are available. You have to go to the school website to understand this. You have to make sure you go through which kind of scholarship you can avail, and where do you fit in terms of the kind of scholarships that you can apply for, right? This could be something that you can get before you get an after you get an admit, before you actually join the school. Or there are some kind of scholarships available even throughout the process, like some students also get these kind of scholarship options after the first semester, and things like that, right? So you have to go to the school website to understand what are the scholarships and the fellowships available, right? So when do we start thinking about it?
Shri, this is Rohan.
Yeah, Rohan.
Hi, I actually just wanted to add a couple of points, if it's okay with you, on the previous slide.
Sure, please.
So I think just for all the people who are attending today, thanks obviously for logging on with us on a Saturday morning. I think she's laid it out very well in terms of what the options you have available. One thing I'd like everyone to keep in mind, and this is just strictly from a planning perspective, is have the funding at the back of your mind. I think some people who might be new to this process might be wondering why it is that we are recommending financing for an MBA to study in the US. In general, a top MBA in the US can cost you anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000. Which at the current exchange rates is between anywhere between 1.3 to 1.5 to even maybe close to 2 crores, which for most Indians, if not all, is actually a large sum of money. The financing options, so it's very important while you're doing your planning. I think the timeline that Sreed mentioned is obviously the correct way to go about it. But it's always important that the financing can be as important a decision as it is to where you're applying and where you've got admitted and where you're planning on going. So don't rush your financing. Make sure that you know of your options over a period of time. Start exploring them early. So when you come to the point where you have to make a decision, you have all of the information, you've done the comparison, and then you're making an informed decision. What people end up usually doing, at least in India, is within a period of 2 months, try and get all the information and then do it. So like she mentioned, like you do with your planning for the colleges, make sure you give the financing a little bit of time as well. especially after you've applied between application and the results. And I'll cover some of these options that she mentioned on this as well. I think it's very important for people to understand that there are a lot of options that are available for students wanting to go to top tier schools. Obviously, the ones that Crack Verbal sends a lot of students to and helps. But there are a lot of options available for maybe a tier 2, or maybe a school that's in the, from the top 50 to the top 100. And speak to friends, speak to organizations like Crack Verbal, because each of these has their pros and a lot. Each of these has their cons. So it has to be a very individualized process depending on each person's needs and requirements. And I'll cover a little bit more of this maybe at a later stage. But this is a good slide, and I just wanted to share my thoughts.
Great. Thank you, Rohan. Cool. So I'll just again show you one slide which focuses on how much it would cost. I think Rohan has already talked about this. This is how typically, this is the first year budget of one of the top B schools in US, right? So you have tuition fees, room and board, books and supplies, transportation, health insurance, and personal expenses. About $111,900, for the first year. Approximately $200,000 for the whole course. So looking at then conversion rate with Indian currency, I think it comes to around 1.5 CR for a complete MBA program. Again, this is the data that is picked up from the real top, one of the top schools, and the latest information, right? So you can actually look through this information from most of these schools' websites, right? So cool. So when do we start planning about it? Obviously, we start planning about it right now. We have to start thinking about the finances and the funding options. Rohan, you can take it over from here. We'll talk about MPOWER and how MPOWER can help our students get into top schools and help them with their funding.
Sure. So, hey guys, this is Rohan here. What I'll do is, I'll start off by telling you a little bit about myself. I know she's already introduced me, but about my personal experience. And then, talk a little bit about the options that she had mentioned earlier. And after that, maybe talk more about and introduce MPOWER Financing to you as one of the options that that is available to students wanting to study in the US. So like she had mentioned, my name is Rohan. I graduated from the Wharton School in 2006. I worked with JP Morgan in the investment bank in New York for a couple of years. After that, after which I came back to India. Currently, I'm the country director for MPOWER Financing. But prior to this, I, along with a friend of mine from the University of Pennsylvania, started an online retail brand called Bhane that was backed by India's largest exporter and manufacturer of garments. Apart from what I do with work, I'm also very involved with all of Penn's strategy and all of Penn's planning here. University of Pennsylvania is planning here in India, especially in North India. And, I was in your shoes many years ago, come from a middle income family, was a good student, was very focused on going to the US. But the two biggest factors that I needed to consider were, one was, will I be able to get admitted? And second, which is equally important, was if I do get admitted, how am I going to be able to sustain such an expensive education? So, I think in terms of the getting admitted part, you have organizations like Crack Verbal that are very good at what they do. I always advise people that the best way to take this forward and to do well and get admitted is get guidance from reputed people who've been there, done that. Especially if they have a track record of sending people to the top schools, because there are ways and means of improving your application and making that change of 1% that might, in the end, make all of the difference. Personally, for me, like with many of you, I'm guessing who are here this morning, I come from a middle-income family. My parents were typical of Indian parents, said that you go and we'll figure it out. We have enough to sustain you for the first half. And then once you get there, we'll figure it out and plan it. And what ended up happening was, I was obviously supported as much as possible with my parents, but I was also very keen to be independent and try resources and figure other options on my own as well. So uh, uh, when I was there in the US, like she'd mentioned, there are options when you're there in the US in terms of speaking to the university itself or getting loans in the US. And this was many years ago. So organizations like MPOWER were actually not even in existence then. And I applied for two loans. One was with Citigroup in the US that had a partnership with Wharton and with Penn. And that process literally took me 1 week. I filled in the documents on a Monday, submitted it on Tuesday, and by Friday, I'd received my sanction letter, and by the following Monday, the funds were in my bank. I still had a certain amount that was still pending, and for that, I was referred to an Indian public sector bank here in Delhi. And that process of mine started in May of 2005. And by April of 2006, close to a year later, they still hadn't sanctioned or dispersed the loans. And I just wrote to them and told them that, listen, if you're not sending it in the next 2 weeks, then I don't need it because I'm graduating in 4 weeks. And that whole process was wrought with confusion, and the banks themselves didn't know what they were doing, whether they'll be able to do it or not do it, and asking for a lot of documentation. And it always got me wondering that, my classmates from India and from other developing countries are very smart. They're doing well. They get good jobs. But why is it that, especially from a big country like India, we're unable to help them with this process? So, that was the genesis of my thinking. And that was something that I was very interested in and trying to change while I was here in India. And that was also the genesis of what MPOWER was built on. That as international students, you've been admitted to a top US program. Why aren't there banks that are lending to me without either a US cosigner or an Indian cosigner or any collateral, effectively completely unsecured? And a few banks that when they are able and willing to lend, the process is just horrible. It takes months, there's paperwork, there's so much running around. People over a period of time have nowadays started valuing time as well. So it was very important for us as an organization to address these concerns. I'm going to talk a little more about who we are, what we do, why we do it, and how you can benefit from MPOWER, our product, and our process. But I just wanted to share my personal experience that, and I know people are still friends of mine and other family members who I advise and who come to me for guidance and insight. I always tell them that this is if you're looking at something in India, it is a long drawn process. It does take time. So keep options that might be available open outside of India as well. And before we move on to specifically about MPOWER, I'm going to take a little bit of time just to explain the process, the options that Sri had just mentioned. So obviously, just to give you an idea, there are about 1 million international students studying in the US as of December last year. So across various degrees, across various schools, across various programs, out of which about 450,000 are from China and about 150,000 from India. And each of these students is spending close to between $30,000 to $35,000 annually. So just to give you the size of the market, it's about between $30 to $35 billion just to help finance students, international students who are in the US at any given point of time right now. And most of these students require some sort of additional funding and additional financing. Based on research that's been done by the US government and the US Department of Education and the US State Department, that the biggest source of funding that international students take to get to the US is actually loans, both private and both from private and public organizations. And the smallest form of funding is actually self-funding. And a lot of that self-funding is actually hidden by loans that they've already taken that might not be education loans. So I think the options that she had laid out are very important. and cover all of the categories that you should consider, especially if you're going to a top school in the US. I'll speak very briefly about each one of them, and then we can move on to specifically about MPOWER. So in terms of uh, coordinating directly with your university, I think that's a very good option because they have set processes and they're able to help students directly as much as possible. To a couple of things to keep in mind, that different universities have different processes and will have different products for different students. So depending on how many universities you're applying to, this process at times can get a little confusing and may or may not be able to suffice for what you're looking for. Having said that, it's universities themselves have a very detailed financial aid scholarship website and information. So I would recommend all of you guys to spend a little bit of time on there. They usually have a list of preferred lenders, or they usually have a list of impaneled partners, or general information that they share, especially for international students who are looking at attending their university. Some of these universities may, during the application process, if they're unsure, ask you for information regarding your finances. Others may do that after you've been admitted. So it's very important to have some sort of an idea of how you're going to provide them proof of financing. So obviously, the university that you're applying to, the B school that you're applying to, is very important. Is a very important resource to look into when you're looking at financing. The second option are private lenders. So MPOWER is one private lender that is available. I'll talk about some of our advantages, our differences as we move ahead. Along with that, you obviously have in-country lenders in India, any of the private banks or any of the public sector banks, but they come with their hassles. They come with high interest rates, lower amounts, misunderstanding of the whole process, and overall, it's not a good experience. Personal funding, we realize, is actually very important to show both from two perspectives. One is from the college's perspective, that you have a certain amount of financing that's available. A lot of students who are actually going for MBA have worked at good companies and have thought ahead and saved a little bit of money, whether it's 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, or 15 lakhs, whatever it is. It also helps slightly from a visa perspective when they see that you're actually putting in personal finances towards your education, showing that you have resources available here in India to pay for your education. Along with that, what happens is a lot of employees, a lot of employers, so if you're working for a top consulting firm or a top bank or a top private equity firm, will actually give you the option to help them pay for you. So they might have a sponsorship program where they say, okay, we'll sponsor you or your education as long as you come back to us. So if you're working at a top company, a top consulting bank, investment bank, private equity, or tech company in India, that's definitely an option that you should consider. The downside of that being that you have to, you're sort of bound to come back to them. That may not be, suitable to you. Once you're there in the US, you might want to explore other options. And finally, I think scholarships is actually is a very good avenue because it's literally free money. But on that part, it's actually extremely difficult because most scholarships that are offered are merit-based scholarships. And because most of the students who are getting into these top schools or even a top 100 school are very good, so you're competing for a very small pool of money with a very large pool of applicants. So I would say that don't depend or rely on scholarships. It's a nice to have. It's not a need to have. So definitely keep these things in mind, and reach out to Crack Verbal and reach out to us if you have any issues or concerns regarding any of these funding options. So based on all of this, we at MPOWER realized that there was definitely still a big need for students to get basically what we call a pure form education loan. And the way I'll quickly describe this is when you get a car loan, you get it against your car, When you get a home loan, you get it against your home. Similarly, when you get an education loan, you should be getting it against your education. But banks in India, other lenders in India and internationally, don't have the ability and the willingness to analyze, judge the education that you're planning on receiving. They don't know the difference between a Penn State and a UPenn. They don't know the difference between a Rutgers and a Columbia. So because an education is an intangible asset, most of the in-country lenders that we have here in India will ask for collateral or cosigner. And the biggest benefit of an MPOWER loan is that we actually don't require any collateral, cosigner, co-applicant, or co-borrower. Shri, can we move to the next slide? I can't seem to change it from my panel. So the biggest advantage that we provide is obviously the fact that we're without collateral, cosigner, co-applicant, or co-borrower. This is just a glimpse of the team back in Washington, D.C., which is where we are based. We're close to about 35 people right now. And we're a very vision-driven company. Most of the people in this picture were in your shoes many years ago. They understand the struggle. And if they weren't, they know of people, either friends or family, very close friends or family, who were. So they've all left very prosperous jobs across the world and across various industries to join the team to see how it is that we can help students attend the best universities in the US. Shri, can we go to the next one? Thanks. So very briefly, just wanted to mention a few of the advantages, benefits, and unique proposition that MPOWER Financing provides. So like I'd mentioned, our loans, all of our loans are without collateral, cosigner, co-applicant, co-borrower, or US or India credit score. I'll highlight each of these very briefly. Like I said, we have the ability to analyze, and I'll show you in the next slide what it is that we ask for and what it is that we don't. We're very transparent in our application process. So we don't believe that there's any correlation between your parents owning a house in Koramangala or an apartment in Vasant Vihar or a flat in Bandra to you getting into a Kellogg or a Stern or a Wharton or a Stanford. So because there's no correlation, you didn't get into those universities because of those assets. You should also not be financed because of those assets. Further, we think that people who are going at least for their masters to the US are fairly independent, older students who've got a little bit of work experience and may actually not have parents or guardians who are able to provide co-signing and co-applicant facilities, because they themselves might have other loans that they are repaying. They might be in the process of retiring, and also that this is something that we don't believe in. And finally, I think it's important for you to understand that the concept of credit score, it's becoming very popular in India now, especially CIBIL. In the US, the most common one is FICO. And all of the US is effectively based on your credit score. So from hiring a car to renting an apartment to getting a cell phone connection, your US credit history or US credit score will be required for all of that. However, MPOWER as a lending organization does not require any of these to provide a loan to you. Overall, compared to other lenders, both in country and out country, MPOWER is, the way I like to say, is better, cheaper, easier, and faster. So how are we better, cheaper, easy, and faster? So our entire process actually is free, fast, online, and paperless. So I'll take a couple of minutes to describe each of these to you as well. It's free because we don't charge you anything to apply. You can get your conditional approval letter. You can get your visa support letter completely free. And we get you to sign your documents and all of that is completely free. We don't have anything that's called an origination fee, that's called an application fee or a processing fee that most lenders in India will charge at the upfront before they give you a decision. And this can vary from 1% to 2% of the loan amount. regardless of what the decision is, and is usually always actually non-refundable. We have something that's called an origination fee. This origination fee is actually required to be paid by the student only at the time of disbursement of the loan. And instead of being an upfront fee like it is here in India, it's simply added on to the cost of the loan and repaid by the student over the 12 and a half years when they repay the loan. So it's neither deducted from your loan amount, nor is it required to be paid by you upfront. It's simply just added to your loan amount and then paid by you over the next 12 and a half years. It's fast because it's a 30-33 policy that we try and follow. So 30 seconds to check your eligibility on our website to see if you can apply for one of our loans. 30 minutes to complete your application on our website. It's very basic, very basic information is required. And within 3 business days, we're able to give you a decision on whether you've been approved or not been approved. So it's a fairly fast process compared to the months, weeks and months that other in-country lenders might take. Our entire process is online. So from checking your eligibility to application to approval of the loan to signing of the documents to disbursement of the funds directly to your university to repayment, the entire process is online and can be done by you sitting at your home. You don't need to be in the US. You can be anywhere in the world because we lend to 180 different countries. Our communication is online, our customer service is online. All of the questions students ask, we do online. You're not required to wait in line or come and visit in our office or any of that. And then finally, our entire process is paperless. So you're not required to self-attest anything. You're not required to sign any documents physically, come and submit that. There's no physical KYC. All of what we do is tech enabled because we're a fintech company and done at the back end online. So it's a free, fast, online, paperless application. One thing to remember about MPOWER is we're a fixed loan product. I'll talk a little more about this in the next 5 to 10 minutes. But we offer a competitive discounted fixed interest rate of 10.49% for graduate and postgraduate students wanting to study in the US. We're because we offer a fixed product, we're very transparent, and we let students know at the beginning what it is that they are signing up for. In terms of the free part that I mentioned earlier, you can actually cancel your loan even after the funds have been dispersed up to 30 days without any fees, fines, penalties, charges to the student whatsoever. So our discounted rate is our fixed discounted rate is of 10.49%. It starts at 11.99, but we give 3 very easy discounts of 0.5% each, bringing it down to 10.49%. So regardless of whether you're going to regardless of whether you're going to Stern or to Stanford, the interest rate when you apply with us will be fixed. There are certain advantages of a fixed interest rate loan, and we'll discuss that very briefly going forward. But we are able to let at least students know upfront what it is that they're getting into. The next advantage that we have, I think, which is actually very important and very unique, is that because we're a US-based company, we are able to help international students build their US credit history and credit score. And like I had mentioned to you earlier, this is very important in the US. I, as a student, could not get a cell phone in the US for my first year because I didn't have US credit history, and they were not able to give me a postpaid connection unless I paid like a $2,000 deposit. So that was absolutely ridiculous at that point of time. Things have improved now, but even simple things like renting a car and all can be more expensive or can be more difficult without a US credit history. So this is something that no one else is able to do. MPOWER, being a US-based financing company, is able to help international students build their US credit history and the credit score. In terms of the amount, we are very clear about how much we can lend. We lend up to $50,000, which at this day and age can be between 30 to 35 lakhs of rupees over 2 or more academic periods. So over the course of your funds, over the course of your study, we require students to have a certain amount of personal funding or scholarship or additional funding that is available. And one of the things that we also do is we provide top-up loans. So unlike other lenders who will not provide a second education loan, we are okay with, based on the student's profile, providing a second education loan as well. Like I mentioned earlier, we give you a US visa support letter on our US company's letterhead signed by the CEO, completely for free once you get approved for one of our loans, that you can use both for your I-20 and for your visa. I-20 and visa at this point of time might not make much sense to you because you're all obviously just looking at applying, but very important to keep in mind, because these are things that people think of only at a later stage that might actually have a big impact on your final attendance in the US. And finally, our loans cover any and all US college, any and all college-related expenses, including off-campus housing, third-party insurance, textbooks, and meal plans. This is in contrast to Indian lenders who actually only cover what's invoiced by the university. They will first require you to make a 20% or 30% margin money or down payment. Once you do that, then they'll require you to provide proof of payment. Then they'll require you to have a new set of invoices provided to you showing that the payment has been received by the college. And only then will they cover maybe 60-70% of the cost of attendance. And even that might not cover off-campus housing, which at most times is usually cheaper and better than on-campus housing provided by the college itself. And as an additional, we think of ourselves as a community. So as an additional benefit, we provide US resume and career strategy services from in-house experts who are part of the team and who've been there, done that. Thanks. So like I mentioned, one thing that that MPOWER is very focused on is your future potential and not just your past. We're more than just a loan. We look at your future earning potential, and we're very clear about what it is that we analyze and what it is that we don't. So what it is that we don't look at, very simply put, we don't look at any collateral, cosigner, any credit history no credit history is required. We also don't require your family's financial background is not a factor. So your parents' income tax returns, balance sheets, or any of the usual forms that Indian banks require, we actually don't. It's a very simple process. You can actually visit our website, empowerfinancing.com, and see the documents we need, why we need it, and how we analyze it. So the second slide, the left-hand side should be what we do look at. I think there's a typo in there. So what we do look at is actually your academic success. So we'll take into account your grades. So if you're going for a master's, we'll take into account how well you've done at the undergrad level, at the bachelor's level. You will take into account your GMAT and your GRE scores, your IELTS and your TOEFL scores. And two things that we require is that you have to be graduating in the next 2 years. So for anyone who's going for an MBA, most MBA programs are 2 years. So you're automatically qualified for that from that point. And second is that the school and the program that you're planning on attending are highly regarded. MPOWER currently supports over 200 universities in the US. These are both the best and the top, and range from Harvard to Hult. So we will take into account the school and the program that you're attending as one of the factors. So we're very clear. Again, I just want to mention the left-hand side of what you're seeing, if you're seeing the slide, is what we do look at is the academic success part. And on the right-hand side is what we don't look at, and we try and be as transparent and clear as possible. In terms of the process, like I mentioned, it's about it's 30-33. So 30 seconds to check your eligibility. Just visit our website. It's completely free. Check if your school program is part of part of the list that we support. Apply and upload your documents. We ask for basic information, personal information, educational background, work history, and a certain amount of financial details. To actually be eligible for a loan, we do require an admit letter. Excuse me. From the university, which you can provide to us when you receive it. And once we've received a completed application, you'll get an email from us saying that it's gone for review. And then usually within 3 business days, we'll be able to give you a decision, which will include watching a small introductory video. We'll verify details from your school directly as well. And along with that, we'll schedule a call at your convenience to answer any questions that you may have. So it's a very easy process. And once you're verified and the documents have been signed, the funds are actually dispersed directly to the university on your behalf, saving you the hassle of transferring the money from India and also the charges and costs associated with it. So some of this, I've actually already covered. So I just wanted to show you some of the differences and advantages that MPOWER has over other lenders. So fixed rates, obviously your rate never increases. We'll discuss that very briefly going forward. The application fee is only charged upon disbursement of loans. So it's a origination fee that we charge. It's not a processing fee, and it's completely refundable if you decide on not taking the loan or canceling the loan. We support over 200 universities in all major programs. And so for give you an example, the University of Pennsylvania has 13 different schools, including the Wharton School, which is the #1 business school. So we support all of the different programs and universities at UPenn, which may not be possible with other lenders. We provide interest rate discounts as our loans are completely unsecured. So no collateral, co-signer, co-applicant, co-borrower whatsoever. And then we provide you the opportunity to receive US tax advantages and to also build your US credit history. Thanks. So I actually just wanted to spend maybe the next 5 minutes. Shri, we are good on time for right now, right?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to spend the next 5 to 7 minutes. I know we have a few questions, so we'll get to that at the end of this as well. On a brief guide to our product, because we have certain unique advantages that we think it's important for students to understand. We keep telling students that why the interest rate on your student loan should not be the only factor when you're assessing its cost. So if someone tells you, that you're getting a loan at, let's say, 9.5%, it may not actually be cheaper than, let's say, a loan that you take at maybe 10 or 10.5%, because there are various other factors that go into actually assessing the cost of the loan and the final amount that you end up paying. The first one is obviously interest rate discounts. Is your provider giving you discounts of the interest rates for doing well and keeping up with payments? Our loan is fixed, but we will discuss the hidden dangers of variable interest rates. As you may know, on the 6th of June, the RBI increased the interest rates in India. The Fed has increased the interest rate in the US, I think once, if not twice already this year, with the possibility of doing it twice more this year. So obviously, with variable interest rates in an environment like today, it can become costlier and more expensive. Interest capitalization basically simply means that, are you paying interest when it's due, or are you not paying it and letting it accrue to your principal, which makes your loan amount much higher when you graduate. And depending on your loan tenure amount, if you're paying a smaller amount over a longer period of time, it may actually end up being more expensive than paying a larger amount over a shorter period of time. So we'll discuss all of these four. I'll start with the benefits of the interest rate discounts in the next slide. So MPOWER as a company, we put the student upfront for all of our decisions and in all of our thinking. We're a young team and we're also growing and learning. There are 3 easy ways to earn a reduction on your interest rate. Like I mentioned to you earlier, that our fixed interest rate for graduate and postgraduate students is 11.99, but we offer 3 rewards of 0.5% each, reducing it by 1.5% to 10.49%. The first is simply when you sign up for, let's assume you've taken the loan's been dispersed. You sign up for automatic online repayment. So the same way you pay your cell phone bill, your Tata Sky bill, your credit card bill through your bank, the same way you sign up to repay automatically your loan with us, we give you a 0.5% discount. The moment you make 6 continuous payments on time, we give you another 0.5% discount, reducing your interest by 1%. And finally, when you provide us proof of graduation and full-time employment, we reduce it by another 0.5%, giving you a total discount of 1.5%. And reducing your interest rate from 11.99% to 10.49%. I think it's very important that we do this because it helps us stay in touch with the student, helps us understand the student's needs and requirements. And we are giving the student the benefits and the advantages of doing well by rewarding them with these discounts, which no one else does right now. I'll just spend very little time on fixed interest versus variable interest for the benefit of people who may not know. A variable interest rate basically has a base rate and a fixed margin. The variable base rate can be any of the benchmark lending rates, whereas the fixed margin is what is used by the borrower, by the lender, to price the risk of the borrower, independent of macroeconomic conditions. So it can be MCLR plus 8%, LIBOR plus 10%, or the fund rate plus 3%, whatever it might be. But there's a base rate plus a fixed margin that the lender charges over and above that. Okay, so there was supposed to be a graph here that I think is missing. We can move on to the next one, Shri. I'll explain it to them. So basically, the last slide was to indicate was about how LIBOR rates have changed, which is the benchmark rate that they use in the UK. It's changed from 1.3% in September of 2017 to 2.3% currently, and is expected to go to about 4% in the next few months. So this is just a comparison of the difference between a fixed rate loan and a LIBOR benchmark loan. And as you can see, the differences, we have the period here, we have the rates. So a LIBOR rate, benchmark rate would be, at the current rate would be about 10.8%, whereas a fixed rate based on the discounts that we mentioned would be slightly higher at about 10.99. But over a period of time, for the loan that's taken out in September 2017, if you can see that, if as and how LIBOR changes, the variable rate finance charges will also change. And the fixed rate can give you a savings of up to $2,500, depending on what LIBOR gets to over a period of time. So we realize that most students prefer knowing how much they need to pay. Don't really care about the interest rates and don't want to take that risk, and just budget that into their monthly planning and use that to take it forward. Next, please. Thanks. Very quickly then, the hidden dangers of variable rates. So fixed interest rates, the burden is on the lender. So we, MPOWER as a company, will take the burden and the risk of when payments change. And when interest rates change, it will not be passed on to the borrower. Whereas on variable interest rates, the burden is passed on to is shifted onto the borrower, because the borrower is responsible for paying any change in interest rates. In the fixed interest rates, the interest rate will never increase. Variable interest rates, the interest rates can fluctuate. Fixed interest rates, your monthly payments do not change, whereas with variable interest rates, your monthly payment can change. Just very important things to keep in mind. The second part was, we were talking about grace, the timing of the payment, why it's important, interest capitalization. So grace periods, obviously, I sound very good, but postponing payments means that you pay more and you pay it later. I myself, when I'm told that, oh, you need to pay for this first 6 months, I'm like, okay, that's great. But then when you start digging into the details, you realize that it actually does not make sense. Requiring interest only, we actually require students to make interest only payments while they're in school plus 6 months after they graduate. And for many reasons. One is it has a consistency of cost. So your total borrowing cost does not increase. And we'll show that to you with an example. Because of this, we are able to give you 2 discounts totaling 1% each over the period of your study. And then while you're making these in-school interest-only payments, you're actually building your US credit history, which may help you get a higher limit credit card, may help you get a better rate on the apartment that you're renting when you're working, or even a car loan or anything like that over a period of time. I'll show you on the next slide. Apart from these benefits, what's the impact of no in-school payments? So one of the things that Indian banks do is they say, okay, we give you a moratorium period, we give you a grace period, and they say you don't need to make any payments while you're in school. it doesn't mean that because it's out of sight, it's out of mind. The interest that's actually being is due on a monthly basis is being accrued to your principal amount. So this is a very simple example again of the same example of a $20,000 loan taken in September 2017 with a student that's graduating in May 2019. So a lot of you will be in this position. So the principal for an MPOWER loan will be 21,000. For a competitor loan will also be 21. You start off with the same principal. While you're in school, plus the 6 months after you graduate, your payments that are required from MPOWER are about $210 on a monthly basis. Whereas with the competitor, you're not paying anything, because it's all accruing to your interest. The principal after you graduate, you'll see that's where this difference starts getting accumulated. With MPOWER remains at 21,000 because there's no interest that's been accumulated. Whereas your interest costs have increased your principal by close to 30% with the competitor loan. So you end up graduating with more debt. Similarly, when your prepayments start after graduation, you're paying a smaller amount with an MPOWER loan, whereas with a competitor loan, your interest payments are going to be about 25 to 30% higher. So you graduate with higher payment amount. And I think the final thing is the total financing charges. This is literally the total amount of interest that you've paid over the life of the loan. With an MPOWER loan, it's close to $21,000, whereas with a competitor loan, it's close to $25,000. So it's a difference of 25% over the life of the loan. And you don't realize this upfront when they share details with you. It's only when you do the math, which can be complicated at times, which is why we've done it for you, that you realize that you end up paying more total interest with no in-school payments. Obviously, the other benefits that we mentioned to you on the earlier slide were also provided.
So the key over here, Rohan, is to understand the in-school grace payment option, right?
Yeah, we'd like to highlight because a lot of lenders say that we don't require students to make any payments while they're in school. And students assume that because payments are not required while they are in school, that the interest is actually not being charged. And lenders are not usually upfront about it. And what ends up happening is for the first 2 years while you're studying, you don't get a bill or you don't get any information. And at the end of the second year, when your grace period has ended, they will send you an invoice which will be of a higher amount than what the loan you had taken for, which basically means that the interest that was due has been accrued, and you actually end up paying interest over and above that. What we realize is all international students are legally allowed to work for 20 hours on campus. And if you're going for a top MBA program, you can be earning anywhere from $12 to $15 an hour. So even if you work, let's say, 15 hours a week, which is not a whole lot, which is about 3 hours a day, you end up earning about $225 a week. So over a period of a month, you can actually end up earning about $1,000 in additional money and resources. And a lot of students use that to make in-school payments with us. So keeping all of that in mind, it's important for students to understand the entire amount, that the cost of the loan over the entire amount as opposed to just the interest rate. Great. So we just want to put the two together, that variable interest rate plus no in-school payments. And here you will see that the difference, right from the get-go at even the current LIBOR rate can end up saving you about $2,000 up to about $5,000 over the cost of the loan. So the effect and the benefits of the MPOWER loan for in-school payments plus fixed interest actually multiply once everything is taken into account. So the MPOWER loan is actually now cheaper in all scenarios. And finally, this is very simple. Why low rate does not equal a low cost. So, the term of the loan is also need to be taken into account and has an impact on the total financing charges, which is the sum of all the interest you pay across the life of the loan. Increasing the term of the loan can often reduce in monthly payments, but increases the total financing charges. This is very simply put in the next graph. I think we have it, but you'll see that in the lower loan with a competitor loan, which is a smaller amount over a longer period, the financing charges are actually close to $6,000 more. compared to what you would do, let's say, with a 10-year MPOWER loan. So this is a very simple concept. I think most people understand this, and we just wanted to spend a little bit of time actually explaining all of these to you in terms of how it relates to MPOWER, and also educating you on all of these factors should be considered by you. Whether you take an MPOWER loan or not is irrelevant right now, but when you're considering any loan whatsoever. I think this is it from my end in terms of explaining the MPOWER product and the process. Shri, over to you, and then I can take any Q&A about, because I've been there, done that, on the product process, my experience. If you guys have any questions on visas, the current situation in the US, jobs, happy to take that as well.
Great. Thanks, Rohan. So we'll take in some questions. So I have some questions which are, a lot of people are repeatedly asking. So as we understand, MPOWER completely focuses on US schools?
So right now, yes, we support over 200 universities in the US. By the end of this year, we'll start a pilot program with Canada as well. But as we speak right now, it's only US universities.
So you're looking at MS and MBA programs, or only focus on masters?
So we actually do undergrad, grad, and postgrad. So we do MS, MBA, PhD, LLM, LLB, undergrad. So BBA, BA, BSc, all of those. So as long as you're attending one of the over 200 universities that we partner with, we'll be able to support all programs, undergrad and grad. So whether you're going for an MBA or you're going for an MS, let's say you're going for an MS in data analytics, we're able to support that as well.
Okay. One other question Rohit has asked is, it said in one of the slides that the amount that is dispersed is around $50,000, right? So how do they take care of the rest of the amount that they need to pay for?
That's a good question. So what we actually do is we are trying to we're trying to remove the financial barriers for more students to try and access higher education at the top universities in the US. Because of that being our mission and vision, we are at right now offering a smaller amount to a larger group of students. What happens with a lot of our applicants is that they have some amount of funding that's already available through the resources that you actually mentioned earlier, Shri, in terms of private funding, scholarships, grants from the university. And they have this last bridge, or they have this certain amount that they're unable to fulfill. So what we realize is most students, when you provide them up to $50,000, it might not be, it might be maybe a third of your cost of attendance for a top program, but they usually have some amount of other additional funding that's available. And for other programs that are not, let's say, in the top 5 or top 10, they usually have a cost of attendance. You can get a great degree, a great program in the US for even $80,000 or $85,000 over a period of 2 years. So for students like that, we are able to cover a big portion of their cost of attendance. Two things I want to point out here is, one is we don't restrict what you use the money for, as long as it's related to your university and to your studies. So whether you want to use it for, like I said, off-campus housing, third-party insurance, study abroad programs, meal plans, textbooks, we are fine. You can go ahead and use it for that. And second is, we don't restrict ourselves to, let's say, 70% of cost of attendance. Whatever we approve you for is whatever we give to you, regardless of what amount of money you put in.
Okay, great. So one more question somebody's asked is, do we charge for any pre-closure of loans?
No, that's a good question. So we actually don't charge there are no prepayment penalties. We don't charge you anything, any fees, fines, penalties whatsoever for you to repay your loan before it's due. We realize that students, actually a lot of international students, specifically Indian students, are very conscious about saving. And over a period of 3 to 4 years, they might actually have saved enough to repay the loan, or might have got a bonus, or might have got a substantial hike in salary. So there are absolutely no charges whatsoever. You can take the loan from us in Jan, and in June you get a good internship. You save a lot of money, and you realize you don't want to keep the loan. You can just repay the entire thing.
Okay. So one of them has also asked that what if the grace period, they are not able to pay that amount? What happens?
So We actually require students as part of the loan to make these monthly payments. That is mandatory. Like I said, there are enough options available for students to do it. Uh, Students usually use one of the three following options. One is they are working on campus, so they're able to earn enough and use that to pay. Second is they sometimes keep family funding available or personal funding available aside to make these payments while they're in school. And third is some people actually end up taking a slightly larger loan. So if they need, let's say, $45,000, they'll take $50,000, and they'll use some part of that extra amount to actually repay make the in-school payments. Having said that, we do have programs, forbearance programs, deferment programs for students who might be facing specific hardships, and we work with them on a case-to-case basis as and when that need arises. So, we realize that there might be a change in plan. Your job might be starting 3 months later than anticipated. There might be a family issue based on which you might not be able to fund it for a few months. So as long as you come back to us, share that information with us, we're able to work with you and provide you with these different deferment, forbearance programs that we have that's provided to you as part of the loan product.
Great. So, Rohan, couple of questions. I'm just merging, 3 or 4 questions together. So, one question is everybody is asking is, how is the H1 scenario there? And since you've worked in investment banking, how easy is it to get into something like investment banking in the current scenario? And obviously, with the H1 thing coming up, and with the current focus on limited number of H1 visas and things like that, how do you think it's going to affect Indian applicants?
Sure. So I'll address the first part first. So I think like with any competitive job, whether it's in the US or in India, in banking or in consulting, the US job market is very strong. Top tier schools, top companies come to top tier schools every year to come and recruit students. Depending on the economy, they might hire 5 or 50 students. But it's a competitive process. It's not easy, but jobs are definitely available. And a lot of the large banks are keen on hiring international students because they want diversity of thought, they want diversity in the workforce, and they realize that they add a lot of substantial value to the companies. So I think in terms of the jobs, I actually think it's a very strong job market. From people I speak to, friends and others, people are getting 1 or 2 options to consider before they make a decision. In terms of the H1B, Sri, I actually, have a slightly contrarian view. So a lot of what the media says, what you read about is either incomplete or misinformation. So from when I was there about 10 years ago, if not slightly longer, to what it is now, the H1B process and the H1B numbers have actually not changed. The amount of visas that they're issuing has stayed the same. The policies have stayed the same. So when you hear about all of these in the media that people are not getting the H1B or the H1B is being rescinded and all of that, the way the H1B process works, and this was the same when I was there as well, is they have a quota of 65,000 visas plus another 20,000 for students who are doing masters. So for most of the people who are on this call, it will be a total of 85,000 visas. Once they receive enough applications, which is usually depending on the time of the economic cycle, they will close that window. And then if it's exceeded the number, they will do a lucky draw. So I'll give you an example. When I was there, they received more applications than they could process within the first week. So from April 1st to April 7th, they closed it on April 7th and it went into a lucky draw. But 4 years after that, around 2008, 2009, 2010, they weren't receiving enough applications because of the Wall Street financial crisis to even fulfill that 85,000 H1B quota that they have. Now that the economy is improving, they're obviously receiving more applications than they have visas for. So the situation, honestly speaking, has not changed in the last 10 to 12 years, because even 10 years ago or 12 years ago, it ended up being a lucky draw where all of the applications who had applied within a certain time were put into the pool, and then you were when you were put into the pool, you were randomly selected on getting the H-1B or not getting the H-1B. So in terms of the H-1B, nothing has actually changed. On the contrary, two things have actually happened, and which is beneficial to students, which the current administration has done. Their focus is actually on the abuse of the H-1B visa by certain companies, including Indian companies, who were effectively flooding the application pool with applications for their workers from India, sending them to the US. All of these IT companies have actually reduced their H-1B applications by anywhere from 15 to 30% in the last couple of years, keeping in mind that this is not a sustainable strategy and not the right thing to do. So technically speaking, what's ended up happening is that the number of applications that these companies are putting in have reduced. So just, you have a fewer number of applications for the same number of visas. So numerically, the chances of you getting a visa has actually gone up slightly because the number of applications from the Indian IT companies has reduced. Secondly, what's happened is these companies have been encouraged to hire locally on campus. So, for example, and with all due respect to people who might be on this call, let's say Wipro or TCS is hiring. So TCS now will hire directly on campus. So instead of getting hired by TCS from an Indian university, if you're studying there, you can actually get hired by TCS when they come on campus to your university with all of the perks, advantages, and salary benefits of that they would offer to a US citizen. So keeping both these things in mind, as a student, as a former student, and as someone who tracks this market very closely, I say that the scenario is the same as it's definitely not deteriorated. It's the same as what it was before. And if nothing else, these companies are taking steps in the right direction to actually benefit students who've been there for 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, and a longer period of time to actually get the H-1B visa.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great insight actually. A lot of new things that we've heard. One more thing, going back to something related to how MPOWER helps students. One of the students is asking about how is the $50,000 is for the entire 2-year program or it's for the first academic year?
So the limit of $50,000 is for the entire duration of the course.
Okay, and does it include or exclude personal expenses? How does that work?
So we are happy to fund personal expenses as well. We'll ask you to share with us your cost of attendance and how much you require from us. Once we issued the loan to you, it's completely dependent on you how you want to use it, whether you want to use it for your personal expenses related to your college or you wanted to use it for tuition or any other expenses.
Okay, great. So I think all of you, we've kind of covered most of the important questions. The recording will be available to all of you who have registered. You will get it on your email. Just one more thing for people who are not focused on GMAT as yet, you can actually go and sign up for this 4-part video series. I'm just putting in the link on the chat window here. Just give me a second.
And Shri, before you think, I'm just going to share a message with everyone on the chat so that they have all of our information as well.
Sure, absolutely. You can just put that onto the chat window.
Just doing it. So guys, I've just shared with you more information on how you can get in touch with us. Visit our website, email us, WhatsApp us, even schedule calls with us. And then, you can always reach back to Crack Verbal as well, who we're partnering with and taking things forward with.
Great. All of you, I've also put in one more link from Crack Verbal site. So this is a 4-part video series to help people focusing on their GMAT and planning your entire MBA journey. this is a great time to start if you're planning to apply to 2000 for the 2019 intake, right? So please go through, subscribe to this video series also, so that we can help you throughout the journey. I see a lot of questions focusing on the profile and, you know, whether how do I manage this whole thing and whether I'm good enough to apply for a top B school. Please go and fill up the profile evaluation form. You can go to applications.crackable.com. Under the free resources, there is an option for free profile evaluation. You can just go and fill up the profile evaluation form. We'll absolutely love to help you throughout this whole process. For all of, I'll just summarize the whole session. MPOWER focuses on close to 200 universities, 200 programs or universities across US only. They are planning to focus on other countries. As of now, we're just completely focusing on programs in US. Correct, Rohan?
Yes, right now it's only on the US, and by the end of the year, we'll pilot with a few colleges in Canada.
Right. Repeating again, the recording is available, so no problem at all. We'll send you the link of the recording over email. Yeah. Thank you so much, Rohan. It was great having you, for this webinar. Great insights, and you know, we really understood a lot about this entire loan process, and I'm sure it will definitely help our students get to their dream MBA program.
Thank you, Sri. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Great. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much.